Well, I just said earlier that Donald Trump has had 60 years as very, very, very good negotiator. He makes deals, right? And he's surrounded by people who are Bitcoiners. Scott Bessent, Harold Lutnick. If you and I are in government, if I'm the president and you're my vice president, and we realize, holy shit, we have $37 trillion of debt, we're never going to be able to repay this. It's costing us $1 trillion a year just to maintain the debt as it is, but we're also adding $2 trillion every year. Shouldn't we at least be looking at ways, and we're not going to go out and buy 10 Bitcoin to start and then add 5 Bitcoin every week. We're not El Salvador when we're dealing with $37 trillion of debt. So we're going to want to go out there and make our first purchase 400,000 Bitcoin, because once we signal that we're buying Bitcoin, it's like dominoes. Everything is going to fall. Once the United States says, yeah, this is how much Bitcoin we have, and here's how much we bought today, and here's our target, everything changes. So if I'm sitting down and I'm strategizing with you as my vice president, how on earth do we get to 1 million Bitcoin? Well, it's obvious that I'm going to say to you, get Michael Saylor on the phone. I want to talk to this guy. He's American. He understands. He's Mr. Bitcoin. I want to sit down and talk in private with this guy, and I want to have a weekend with him. I want to know every last thing there is to know about his strategy and about what his plan for the future is.
Hello, this is the Bitcoin Libertarian. Our guest today is Sam. Sam is from the Sam's podcast. He's a former SAS customer success manager with an MSc in UX design and metaverse diploma from the Wharton School. Has traded in his corporate gigs for the underlying pursuit of sound money. What makes his story even more legendary, his baby son, that is not today with us in the podcast, orange pill him right now from the start, providing that Bitcoin's revolutions start at home, literally. Sam hosts lively discussions on all things Bitcoin, from market move to philosophical depths, and he's been lighting up X space with a sharp takes alongside Bitcoin maxis like Fred Krueger. Today we will talk about his podcast, why plebs spreading the word is good for massive adoption, and the importance of teaching kids about Bitcoin from the beginning. Sam, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I'm a fan of what you do. It's a great honor to be asked to come on your show. So it's great to be here.
Thank you very much. The honor is mine. As I always say, we have only one thing that is the biggest asset that we cannot recover beside Bitcoin, that is time. And for the people that is giving time to be in my show, talking to me, to my audience, for me, it's a super pleasure, and I'm super grateful to everyone who is here talking about Bitcoin. So let's move to the first question that I have to everyone. The first question is, Sam, how were you, orange pill?
Oh, this is a, even for me, every time I tell the story, I still find it interesting. I first heard about Bitcoin in 2013. I was working as a software developer in Ireland. I was working in Northern Ireland, but I was living in the Republic of Ireland. So I was paid in British pounds sterling. But my cell phone, my car, my insurance, my everything was paid through my Euro bank account. So I was walking around with 2 wallets, 2 ATM cards, 2 little pouches for the change. Sometimes I had too much British pounds in my pocket. Sometimes I had too much Euro in my pocket. I was constantly juggling. Every day when I crossed the border, I would stop at a bureau to change and exchange money. And of course, they make their money out of the exchange. And I was getting killed with bank charges, currency exchange fees, and just the hassle. I had to take an hour or two off work once a week to go to an ATM in Northern Ireland, withdraw money, drive to my bank, and physically, at that time, the ATM couldn't accept cash at the ATM, so I had to go and make the line in the bank, deposit money in my bank to meet my... It was a disaster. So I was complaining at work one day in the canteen, and a guy said to me, "You should buy Bitcoin." And I was like, "What the hell is Bitcoin?" And he says, "Google it." So I went back to my desk after my break and I looked at it, and it was $200. And I had already decided before I saw the price, I'll put 1,000 into this. You know, 1,000 wasn't an insignificant amount of money to me at the time, but it wouldn't have left me homeless if I had lost my 1,000. So I thought I would try 1,000. But I looked at it, and at that time, there were no exchanges like we know them today. I think I had to wire the money through PayPal to some guy who had a picture of a frog as a profile picture, and his name was X1XP9724, whatever. And I said to myself, I'm not sending this guy a thousand. So I backed out. And at that time, it was interesting that I discovered Bitcoin at that time, because that was the time of the Greek crisis, and there was a run on the euro. There was the stock price of the banks in Europe was going up and down. People were making a lot of money actually on the trade at that time, the currencies, because the banks that were exposed to making the money available for the first Greek bailout, they were left exposed when it was revealed that Greece might need a second bailout. So if the European Union hadn't granted the second bailout, the banks that were on the hook for the first money, their stock was going down. So it was in the news. It was, and that's when I first read about Bitcoin. But what was also in the news at that time was the dark web. You know, anything that wasn't mainstream was the dark web. Stay away from it. You could go to jail. You're going to meet all kinds of, shady characters. There wasn't as much decentralization at that time. Your news had to come from the traditional news website. Your banking had to come from, you get what I'm saying? So even though I was a software developer and I knew my way around the internet for a long time, I backed out because I just thought it was too shady. And anyway, fast forward, I met my wife, who's also from South America. My wife is from the south of Peru, a city called Arequipa.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, nice place, nice food, nice weather. So I met her, we got married, I moved to New York City, and 2018, I again encountered Bitcoin. I was at a night school on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. The end of term came and everyone went out for a meal after school. It was a philosophy school. So we went out for a meal. There was maybe 20 people. There was a lot of wine. There were starters. It wasn't a cheap place. So when the check came at the end of the night, the check was, I forget how much it was. It was too much for any one person to want to put on their card and have the other people pay them. The restaurant would only accept 2 credit cards. Nobody had cash. One guy was proposing to write a check. Everyone laughed at that. So we sat around for almost, I would say 45 minutes trying to decide how do we settle this check, and the restaurant needed the table. So the manager was walking around, and I said to the manager as a joke, just as a joke to try and break the ice, I said, do you accept Bitcoin? And he said, yeah. So I remember thinking at that time, hey, that's 5 years ago since I first heard about this thing. It's still around. But like an idiot, I came home, I went to sleep, and I got up the next day, went to work. I didn't think any more about it. And so fast forward until, despite the fact that I was almost 51 years of age, we had our first child. Sam came along October 14th, 2023. And my world was turned upside down. On the one hand, the love that I felt, and I always feel my voice choking up when I talk about that. Like it's, when you get through 51 years and you think you're not going to leave, a legacy on the planet, that you're just going to die and that's going to be the end of your line. And when you come through that, and then at 51 years of age, you have a kid, and I know we live in an age of equality, but when it's a son, for a man, I think that to carry on, this is my grandfather up behind me. It was actually his father, so my great-grandfather, that I named Sam for. The love that you feel is it's overwhelming. I was completely overwhelmed with love. I never felt anything like it before in my life. But on the flip side, I was also overwhelmed with financial insecurity, because throughout my life, I sort of lived day by day. I just wanted to go to work and make it through the week and get to Friday and get paid and have some fun. That was my modus operandi. And after I got married, actually, that didn't change too much. I wanted a lot of disposable income to go and have fun, to travel, to I like my gadgets, my technology. So when Sam came along, I was like, whoa. I barely have enough money set aside for my own retirement. And now he's born when I'm almost 51. So I started doing the math. He gets out of high school when I'm 68. He even if he goes straight to college, he'll get out of college when I'm 72. And then maybe he wants to do a master's. I'll be 75. And I was like, oh my God, how is this going to be possible? So to cut a long story short, my wife, I insisted that my wife get a night's sleep right from the beginning. I thought that was important. So she would go to bed at 10:30 at night, and I would stay in the living room doing the night feeds with Sam. And those nights were long, let me tell you. Like anyone who has ever sat up all night with a kid, those nights are long. You go through a lot of thoughts and emotions. So I had Sam on one arm and I had my phone on the other hand, and I was researching and Googling, and very quickly came, like I knew that I had to go out in the risk curve. I knew that putting my money into the S&P 500 wasn't going to cut it. So I knew I had to go out in the risk curve. And I sort of started off by looking for, I just completed that course that you talked about from Wharton. And now it was on the metaverse, but the individual components of that course were very interesting. They were about blockchain, they were about cryptocurrency, they were about digital economies. So I was looking for an AI play or a metaverse play or a AR or VR or something. And I very quickly saw Bitcoin come up again because that was in the run up to the ETFs. I'm not sure if the ETFs were probably approved at that time, but they hadn't yet come on sale. So they were in the news. And I very quickly discovered Bitcoin, and that was the time, 10 years after I first discovered it, where I said, okay, it's time. This thing's still around. The price has changed enormously. This thing is not going away. So finally, it's time to sit down and research it. And I didn't research too long. I don't claim to be any smarter than anyone else, but maybe given my background and my interest in sort of cutting edge technology and new technology, I was super interested right away to the point where, like, sometimes I tell people it was days, sometimes I tell people it was weeks. I think really and truly, probably that first night that I started reading about Bitcoin, I was like, right, this is something that I'm going to put my faith in. It is risky, it is volatile, but this is what I need. It suited my use case. So I tell people that my son Sam orange pilled me. He was probably less than a month old at that time, so I'll give him the credit. There's a lot of educators out there, and Michael Saylor'S and Adam Back's and Samson Mao's that talk about Bitcoin, but I'll give Sam the credit for having orange pilled me at less than a month old.
It's amazing. It's a beautiful story because like you kept, even though you went through, you had contact with Bitcoin in the early time. I remember that I discovered Bitcoin around 2011. For me, it was just to do payments in and out Argentina. But then I didn't pay attention. And as you said, sometimes I said, if I had bought enough Bitcoin at that time, if I had understood at that time, today I would be retired. Mm-hmm. But as you said, that time was the Wild West. You need to buy Bitcoin, sending. In the case of we are two behind the Bitcoin Libertarian, and sooner all the world is gonna know the other Bitcoin Libertarian for sure. I'm pushing him to be in camera. And he told me, like, when he discovered Bitcoin at that time, he was about to send a transfer to Mt. Gox. And you need to send a bank transfer, wait for like probably 2 weeks with your money in the ether, and then you get your Bitcoin, and was so shady. And then we discovered this local Bitcoin and this P2P that in Argentina. So pay with Bitcoin. And again, at the beginning was all shady about the Silk Road and the dark market. Then we have the other wave into it of the 2017, something like that. And after that, we say, okay, I sit down, I study Bitcoin, and it happened me the same that's happened to you, probably because I have degree in economics. Plus, I'm not a regular economic guy. I am from the Austrian School of Economics. For me, it was easier to understand. The regular economists, they don't understand Bitcoin because they cannot understand how this money system works. But at that time, the education was so few that few people went into Bitcoin, and it was super risky. So that's why we started this podcast and the educational project of Crossroad to orange pill 8 billion people, because we need to tell them and orange pill the people to onboard them on Bitcoin. And walk us through the launch of the SAMS podcast. What sparked the idea of the podcast, and how did you started it?
So the SAMS podcast came about I was already about a year in Bitcoin, and like I devoured all content. Now there may be one or two podcasters out there that I haven't seen, but I'm pretty sure if there's anybody doing anything interesting, I've seen at least one episode of their podcast. I just devoured content. Like those first nights when I was sitting up with Sam, I probably had 8-9 hours of uninterrupted time where I was listening to podcasts. And I very quickly discovered Robin Saylor. I have huge respect for Robin Saylor. I love his show. I love the way there's no rush. We don't need to rush. It's not like a television slot where you only have 30 minutes. There's no rush. We can take our time to talk. And so I liked his podcast. I liked lots of others. Natalie Brunel, BTC Sessions up in Canada. There was lots of them
we lost some
that I started watching right away. So I think I lost you for a second. I wonder if we're back.
Yes, I lost you a little bit. You were telling about Robin Saylor, that, by the way, I do respect him a lot. I was a guest of his show when he was even started. He was putting a lot of effort at that time. He was working in his 9-5 job, and I remember we did the episode, and in his time was around 5 a.m. in the morning, on 4 a.m. because he said, no, it's the time that I have to record now. I'm in Hong Kong. He was in Austria. So I do respect him a lot.
Yeah, right away I respected him. He's firstly very knowledgeable. Secondly, he's a very good podcast host. And thirdly, he's just such a nice guy. So I devoured his content. And I think when you listen to a podcast that has a guest, and such a range of guests, like Robin could talk to a 20-year-old kid learning to use their Lightning wallet one day, and the next day he could be talking to the CEO of a mining company, and then he could be talking to, he talks to a wide range of people. So I think I got a fairly good broad sense of the entire ecosystem from watching Robin's podcast, but also Natalie Brunel and people like that. BTC Sessions I would give a shout out to. So I was watching those, and then I was thinking, okay, they might have 10,000 subscribers, they might have 15, some of them have 200,000 subscribers, and I was thinking, but that's the same 200,000 subscribers every day. 200,000 subscribers is very impressive, but it's the same 200,000 people every day. So I thought, we need more podcasters. We need more voices. Like, if I get 5,000 subscribers, that's 5,000 new people that weren't subscribed to Robin Saylor. Maybe I have a different network. So that motivated me, but also I think I very quickly realized, looking at Sam, that I'm 51 and he's a month old. Or by the time I started the podcast, I was 52 and he was a year old. And I think I realized very quickly, leaving him the sats is only half of the inheritance, right? The other half is, what are these sets? Why are they important? How should you store them? How can you get more of them? How can you not be scammed out of losing them? So I realized pretty quickly that education was as important to leave Sam as the sets themselves. So I thought, how can I do that? Like, how can I bookmark my favorite podcasts and books to leave him? He might not read them, kids are. So I thought, why don't I just create my own podcast and have him as a guest? And the plan came together really quickly. I sort of imagined what would it be like when Sam is my age at 51 or 52, and Bitcoin is the global reserve currency, and these pieces of paper that we carry around, these like the idiocracy of carrying around these pieces of paper are gone. He'll be able to speak to an audience when he's my age, 51 or 52, and he'll be able to say, oh yeah, I was talking to a guy called Larry Lepard about that when I was a year old. I was with my dad. I was on his lap talking about Bitcoin from as far back as I can remember. And I thought that was a really cool way to, because I hear people saying we have to educate the kids, but I didn't want to have to educate Sam, like re-educate him. I didn't want to have to tell him, hey, these dollars, they have a flaw. This is a better solution. I wanted Sam to grow up with Bitcoin as the de facto money, and he'll obviously be aware of dollars and euros and Sol in Peru. But I wanted him from the get-go, before he could understand much, to equate Bitcoin to money. And I think that's what we're doing. He's starting to talk more, and he has said the word money. He taps my pockets, and I always say, no, Bitcoin. He sees coins sometimes and he says money, and I said, no, Bitcoin is money. But so I don't know, maybe I'm indoctrinating the poor guy, but that's the plan. So I wanted to leave him sats, but I also wanted to leave him education right from the beginning.
I love your point, because I think that when your dad is not anymore in this world, you have all these ways to connect with him. For example, I lost my dad. It's gonna be 20 years next year. He left very young, and I have with my dad, I used to have a lot of connections related to football. And anytime there is something related to football, we are Argentinians, so for us, football is a relation. I feel this connection with my dad, even though he's not anymore here. And this is amazing what you said. When he's 52, he's gonna see with you interviewing Larry Lepard. That by that time, because one of the things that I discussed in one episode with Thomas Farrer, from the guy who is from Apollo Sats, who is doing the ETF tracker and all the things, is that we live in a time that we are privileged, because we are living through this change of paradigm. In the future, probably, I don't think Sam, but Sam's son, Sam's children are going to study Bitcoin as a part of story. And when he sees this part of the story, and he sees, oh, I was with my dad when Loris Lepard, this legend that helped to develop a lot of things talking about Bitcoin, I was talking with this guy, with this other guy. It's going to be amazing. And he's going to be very, very proud of that. And on the way, he's going to learn Bitcoin. And one of the things that probably I say, because I don't have kids, but when I become a maxi, I always was the guy who wanted to be single, travel around the world, party, don't live legacy. But when I became a Bitcoin maxi, I said, similar to you, like, I need to leave something. I need to leave my legacy. I need to pass this to, and of course, I want to have kids. And one of the things that I'm gonna say, that the day I have kids with the mother, one of the things that is gonna be non-negotiable is gonna be educating about Bitcoin. So,
absolutely.
How do you educate your kid about Bitcoin? What are the best ways to educate a kid in this era about Bitcoin and sound money?
Well, I was lucky because I was already a Bitcoin maxi before Sam had much comprehension of anything. So, as I said earlier, Sam is going to grow up. Bitcoin is going to be money, and these other things are going to be like Sam will look at dollars the same way. If I'm using dollars in New York, he'll look at dollars the same way as I might have looked at traveler's checks or a checkbook or a credit card, or it's almost money, but it's not quite. But money is going to be Bitcoin. That's I want it to be innate from so that I don't have to educate him, that he just knows only Bitcoin and he's aware of all these other things. But like, that's not possible for people who become maxi when their kid is already 10 years old. And I've heard, because you have to re-educate. And I remember when my nieces and nephews were growing up, they saw an advertisement on the television for Allied Irish Bank, AIB. They're one of the major banks in Ireland. And they would look at the television and they would say, Daddy Money, because they associated the logo of the bank with the ATM or the bank card. So kids like that who have already grown up with fiat, an understanding of fiat currency, you're going to have to re-educate them. And there are some books out there. Some Bitcoiners are producing books so that parents can read to their kids that introduces the concept of, sound money, Austrian economics. We're kind of going into a different area where I'm sort of passionate about this area. I would consider myself very interested in this area. I think the world, I think we're headed for a major change very, very, very soon. And I think, so the obligation may not be on the parents to educate their kids. I think we're going to see a series of events over the coming years where kids are going to know themselves the difference between fiat currency and sound money. And I'll give you a small example. I finished my master's in late 2007. And after getting a bachelor's and then straight away going into a master's, the master's was in UX design and the iPhone hadn't yet come out. And the master's was all about touchscreen and cognitive psychology and how do people perceive technology and interact with it. I was so excited about where I was going in life and who I was going to work for. I was actually kind of sitting thinking, I don't want to work for Apple. I was in a position where I was going to be able to choose where I worked and who I worked for. And then the financial crisis came. So I was rug pulled. Before I even started into a job after my master's, I was rug pulled. And within 6 months, the bank had me in court for my student loan. Well, in Ireland, you don't have a student loan, you have a personal loan. So you don't get any time when you're studying to defer payments. You're making personal loan payments right away. So anyway, so I got a very hard lesson at that time about what money is and what global financial systems are and what fractional reserve banking is and what inflation is and what austerity is. So I believe, and I'm not a doomer, but I believe that we're going to go through a series of events over the coming years where money is going to be the headline news. So I think kids are going to, it's like osmosis. Like kids don't sit down and watch the news, but I think the concept of money is going to come into focus. And by osmosis, they're going to hear adults talking about what's wrong in the world. And I think they're automatically going to become aware of alternatives like Austrian economics and sound money and fiscal responsibility and how ridiculous it is to run deficits and, sovereign debt. And I think that's going to happen naturally over the next number of years. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. And which events do you think that are going to happen in the upcoming years?
Well, I think some of the events are already happening, and I don't think even Bitcoiners are aware that they're happening. Like I think a big component of the unrest or war that you see in the world right now has money. Like I don't believe that Putin got up one day in Moscow and sort of scratched his head and said, what evil things can I do today? Oh, I'll go and invade Ukraine. I think there's other reasons that Putin's in Ukraine. And I think there's other reasons that Putin's flipping the bird to the US and saying, no, I'm not going to talk to you. You haven't talked to me about how you shut me out of those markets for this length of time and how you did this in 2014. And you haven't talked to me about how the European Union is living a hypocrisy with regards to Russia for the past 15 years. So I think these events are already underway. I caught a video last night where I forget the guy's title was in the regime in Moscow, he was a finance minister or a director of something to do with finance. I would guess an economist. And he spoke, and if the translation is to be believed, what the guy said is he was accusing the United States of preparing to rebalance their debt and put the problem of the debt onto the rest of the world the same way they did in the 30s and the same way they did in the 70s. And he claimed that that is underway through stablecoins. So that's something that I've been watching since the spring. Like a couple of years ago, Tether were offshore from the United States. There was no communication between three-letter agencies and Tether. And now Tether is very, very, very closely aligned with the US Treasury. So I'm not saying that that's happening, but I'm just saying it's a possibility. And I think a lot of you see the tariffs, and like to the average everyday person, you can say, oh yeah, there's a trade imbalance and we have to put on a tariff, but it goes a little bit deeper than that, especially if you're a Bitcoiner. Like if you look at the economic posturing between China and the US and you drill down into what's behind that, I think what's behind that is key concepts like AI, Bitcoin, semiconductors. So I think some of these events are already underway. I think AI is going to bring a lot of these events into focus. I think we have I don't think anyone would disagree that we have a sovereign debt crisis. So do I believe that the finance ministers from all the governments around the world are sitting there and they're only looking at fiat solutions to this problem? Absolutely not. If I'm a finance minister, I know everything there is to know about Bitcoin. My government, my state may not own any Bitcoin, but I'm already assigning multiple teams of people to go off and research and produce reports and show me options for moving forward with Bitcoin or stable coins or whatever. So I think these events are underway. It would be naive to think, because these people aren't stupid. For example, in the United States, Donald Trump may be a lot of things, but he's not stupid. You can criticize Donald Trump for many, many, many things, but you can't accuse Donald Trump of being stupid. I think he's a very smart man. And I also think Scott Bessent is a highly intelligent man. And then you have people like Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary, who already owns hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin. So you're telling me that these people aren't behind the scenes making contingency plans to flip the switch and to convert that US debt to something which can be rebalanced? I think this is underway. And I think, to be very honest, I think it's probably what's behind a lot of the world's current diplomacy, acts of aggression, trade situations. So I think we're going to see evidence of that in your home of Argentina. I saw that Milei had a crushing defeat. And I also see that Macron is probably on the way out in France. And I also see that there's a massive protest underway this weekend in Britain to challenge the government. We've seen last year the German government collapsed and a new government came in. So we're living through a period of very rapid change. And I think what's driving that change is money. I think money is at the root cause of a lot of that. So yeah, that's a long way of me saying I believe the process of Bitcoin and game theory, I think it's already started. And just because you don't see evidence of China buying Bitcoin or the United States having a strategic Bitcoin reserve, just because you don't see those headlines, well, look, if you and I were going to start in a campaign to go out and try to get 1 million Bitcoin, we're not going to live stream and say, hey, starting next month, we're going to start buying Bitcoin and we're going to buy it for 5 years, because every idiot out there the price is going to double before we. So I think it's underway. Now, some people throw the allegation at me that I'm a conspiracy theorist. That's fine. I like to investigate all angles. Is Saylor a proxy for the US government? Possibly. So yeah, I think these processes are already underway, and I think it's part of the reason that I'm so excited, not just in the longer term, but I'm excited for the next 6 months, year, 2 years. I think a lot of things are going to happen very quickly.
Yes, totally agree on that. I love the same. I love to research. Of course, I've been called a conspiracy many times. At the end of the day, they give me the reason. One of the things was during what happening between 2020 and 2022, I was called a conspiracy, a crazy, a flat earth guy. And then they give me the reason what happened there. I think that most of I'm not going to mention that because I don't want to lose another YouTube channel. So, but the thing is that I think that most of the Bitcoiners agree on that. And one of the interesting things is you said that and I agree with you 100%. If the government is going to buy 1 million Bitcoin, they are not going to announce in Wall Street like, oh, we are going to buy 1 million Bitcoin, because the price of Bitcoin is going to go to 1 million, 2 million, mostly overnight. So, and they will and they will lose this game theory. You said that this thing that Saylor is a proxy of the U.S. government.
I'm not saying it's true,
but it's the first time I heard that. So can you a little bit on this theory?
Well, I just said earlier that Donald Trump has had 60 years as a very, very, very good negotiator. He makes deals, right? And he's surrounded by people who are Bitcoiners. Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick. If you and I are in government, if I'm the president and you're my vice president, and we realize, holy shit, we have $37 trillion of debt, we're never going to be able to repay this. It's costing us $1 trillion a year just to maintain the debt as it is, but we're also adding $2 trillion every year. Shouldn't we at least be looking at ways, and we're not going to go out and buy 10 Bitcoin to start, and then add 5 Bitcoin every week. We're not El Salvador when we're dealing with $37 trillion of debt. So we're going to want to go out there and make our first purchase 400,000 Bitcoin, because once we signal that we're buying Bitcoin, it's like dominoes. Everything is going to fall once the United States says, yeah, this is how much Bitcoin we have, and here's how much we bought today, and here's our target. Everything changes. So if I'm sitting down and I'm strategizing with you as my vice president, how on earth do we get to 1 million Bitcoin? Well, it's obvious that I'm going to say to you, get Michael Saylor on the phone. I want to talk to this guy. He's American. He understands. He's Mr. Bitcoin. I want to sit down and talk in private with this guy, and I want to have a weekend with him. I want to know every last thing there is to know about his strategy and about what his plan for the future is. And I want to be able to do a deal with him. Could the United States government in the future seize MicroStrategy's Bitcoin? It's possible. It's possible under extreme. I don't think anyone could say no. That's completely impossible. So it's a possibility. So I'm not saying, like, I don't want the headline quote to be, oh, the Sam's podcast accuses Michael Saylor. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a possibility, and I'm saying if you're in government and you're smart, it's certainly something that it's at least there as an option B or an option C or an option D.
Yes, and one of the things that when you were talking about, like, the funny thing is that the guy who closed the Hong Kong Bitcoin Asia conference was Eric Trump. To be honest, I've been in the Hong Kong because it's like 15 minutes away from my house. Even though they didn't give me a press ticket, I was so mad at them for that, but no problem. I made my way to the conference, and I have a good interviews and all the stuff. But the guy who closed the conference was Eric Trump, sit down with, I think that was the CEO of Nakamoto. That Nakamoto is another company. I think that they are they hold treasury company, something like that. I don't know the business model. They buy Bitcoin, but they also do treasuries with treasury companies. And the main sponsor was Metaplanet. So I don't.
Well, Eric Trump sits on the board of Metaplanet.
It's on the board of Metaplanet.
Yeah.
So
and you know, if you want to take that a step further, I forget the guy's name, who's really and truly the financial brains behind the Trump's new company. I forget the guy's name. Witkoff.
yes.
Witkoff's dad was the special envoy sent to Moscow to negotiate a possible ceasefire in Ukraine. So when you start putting the pieces together, like Witkoff's son is working with Trump's two sons at their new treasury company. So, you know, are you a conspiracy theorist, or are you just a guy who's, well, the world is changing very quickly, and you're either looking at it through the lens of 1990s and 2000s politics and economics, or you're looking at it through the lens of things are changing very quickly.
Yes, of course. And for first time in history, there is a form of wealth that they cannot control. And we play all with the same rule. That's the magic of Bitcoin. If you think that this is a conspiracy theory, but how can you battle that? You can buy Bitcoin. And now you can buy Bitcoin with this. Everyone to buy Bitcoin is subject to the same rules. Everyone on the Bitcoin network is subject to the same rules. There is only going to be 21 million coins for me, for you, for Saylor, and for a farmer in the middle of Africa. And the ways to custody are the same. They cannot control the mission. Saylor can get loans at zero cost. I cannot. A person in Argentina even cannot get a loan. So in Africa, but when we buy Bitcoin and when we hold Bitcoin, we play with the same rules. So I think that there is something behind. I don't want to be a conspiracy, something like that, but if you think everything that television tells you, you don't have to believe on that what television tells you.
Well, if you're the type of person that believes, 20 years ago, it would have been acceptable to believe everything the television tells. Well, not everything, but, it would have been acceptable. You had your finger on the pulse if you were watching what the television said, and that day is gone. Like, you can't on the one hand believe in decentralization, the decentralization aspect of Bitcoin, and then deny that there has been a decentralization of media and information. So you have to look in diverse places. You can't rely on mainstream media to tell you the full picture. Very interesting, before you move along, very interesting thought on that. On a much, 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 much smaller basis, I'm able to access money at 0%. And I have been doing it for 2 years.
Amazing.
I don't know if anyone mentioned this to you before on the podcast. It surprised me when I moved to the United States. I went to Chase Bank and I opened a bank account. And the guy said to me, "How much do you earn?" And I said, "What do you mean, how much do I earn? I'm waiting on my green card application. I'm not working yet." And he says, $95,000. And he started entering on his computer. And he says, "What do you work at?" And I said, "Well, I'm qualified as and he put it down, senior executive. And he gave me my bank record. And then he pushed a few more buttons and he said, "You're approved for a credit card with $10,000, right?" So I went out right away and I spent the $10,000. It's what paid part of my green card application and my living expenses. When the first repayment was due on the $10,000, I was sitting at home and I was saying to the wife, I'm going to have to sell this or do that. About 3 days before the first payment was due, an envelope came through the door. I opened up the envelope. It's from Chase, and they say, "We're delighted to offer you a second credit card, and included are 3 checks, 0% for 12 months. If you don't pay back within 12 months, you pay 30%, but it's 0% money for 12 months. I cashed the check. I cleared off my first loan. 6 months later, Citibank sent me checks. I cleared off the check one, and I've been playing that game since. Now, since I got into Bitcoin, I don't cash the checks to go on vacation, or I don't cash the checks to buy new clothes. I cash those checks to buy Bitcoin. And I'm not telling anyone else to do this, but my theory is if the economic circumstances and the fiscal policy of the United States is such that the banks are sending me out interest-free checks, a bum like me, well, then I'm pretty sure that Bitcoin is going to go up in the next 6 months. Why? Because those checks that are coming out, it's new money. It's new money. That's why it's been made available at 0%. So anyway, I have a theory that everyone can operate as a Michael Saylor on a very micro level. And I have when I moved my savings and my retirement into Bitcoin and became maxi, I wanted to continue DCAing, and that's a way that I continue to DCA. I don't know if you'd call that arbitrage, or I'm using money from the banks and the credit card companies, and when the Bitcoin price goes up, I pay back, and I'm left with the surplus. So it's just interesting to let people aware of that. Maybe non-Americans are very surprised about that, but yeah, that's what happens.
Well, here in Hong Kong is easy to get loans. I'm not yet a PR, a permanent resident. It's gonna be in 2 years, but it's very easy to get loans, even if you are not a PR. Is easy with a low interest, and you have all this credit card stuff and whatever. So that's the advantage we have. But for example, in Argentina, in Africa, people don't have this advantage.
Exactly.
Something that we can access to a financial market. We can play with the for example, with the trading account. I don't know how to say, the securities account. You put the money and you get like a bonus, 100% bonus, like if you are in a casino. This is how the normal people don't see that, but this is how the fiat world works. And this is new money. What is the problem with the banks? They do this because they need to issue more money. When they give you a free loan, let's say they give you $10,000 for free, they can loan out 100,000. When they loan out this 100,000, they can loan out 1 million. And that's why the Ponzi scheme of the banks is running. And that's why I agree with you. The price of Bitcoin, in fact, if people understood how the Ponzi scheme of the banks work, Bitcoin would be worth probably $5 million today, not 100,011.
Yep.
So
yeah, I agree.
That's the point. And talking about this thing, what do you think that is going to be the price in the upcoming month? Of course, no financial advice.
It's not financial advice because I'm a tech guy, and I often say on Spaces and on my own podcast, I only have a Bitcoiner's knowledge of finance. And you're trained as an economist. So yeah, it's not financial advice, but from as far back as I would say the spring of last year or the summer of last year, I've had a figure in my head for the end of 2025 of $175,000. And that figure is still, secretly when I'm going to sleep at night and I'm thinking, we all do it. We all dream, or we fear, or whatever we do. When I'm going to sleep, my innermost thought is, yeah. And I have no reason for telling you why the figure of $175,000. Well, I probably do have some reasons, but that figure has been in my head for a while, and it's sort of aligned. Last year, I was very much a stock to flow guy. I believed in the 4-year cycle. Absolutely nothing gets in the way of the 4-year cycle. And then, probably like everyone else, I started paying more attention to the power law and the concept that this cycle could be different. Now, again, I'm not saying I'm dismissing the 4-year cycle. I think we're actually going to see a hybrid of both. So you're asking me about the figure for the end of this year, like December 2025. That's not to say that 175 is going to be the top and then we're going to fall off in January 26. I actually think we're going to keep stair-step climbing. But yeah, 175,000 is kind of like, I think we're really, really undervalued at the end of this summer. Like, I would have been expecting now that we should have been 125, 130, 135 would have been sort of the region that we should be in. But there's a lot of market manipulation going on. I think a couple of weeks ago you saw the OG who shorted IBIT on the Friday afternoon, and on Friday night sold 25,000 Bitcoin that hadn't moved in 12 years. Bitcoin price, now it recovered. It was a V-shaped recovery, but it didn't recover until after Monday morning. So when the market opened up, the IBIT price was lower, and the guy laughing all the way to the bank and probably bought back his Bitcoin and made a profit. So that kind of stuff's going on. It's hard to know if that type of stuff will increase through Q4 of this year. But even if it does, I think what's going to counteract that is I think they're getting ready to print an absolute obscene amount of money in the next, I think it'll start next week. I think that's where it starts. There's people more intelligent than me that talk about the M2 money supply, and I hear people talking about the M3 money supply, and they talk about liquidity and blah, 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 blah. I kind of go along more with the theory that interest rates have a bigger psychological effect on asset prices, because I just think people are emotional. People are emotional when they invest, when they buy, and when they sell. And I think the fact that Jerome Powell comes up to the mic and he says, yeah, we're going with a 1% rate cut. I think psychologically that does something to people, where they say, all right, we're entering into a new era here. I can be a bit more adventurous with my investments. And I think that money finds its way into Bitcoin. So long story short, I think the price manipulation, I think the FUD will continue. It'll probably intensify. Fiat isn't going to go down without a fight. But I think they have no choice. They have no choice. We mentioned Malay earlier. If you look at the appetite for political change around the whole world, what's the one thing that you're hearing back from more or less every country in the world? They're overspending. They have debt obligations. They have interest obligations. But on the other hand, there's no appetite for any cuts. We want to keep going. And as Lynn Alden says, nothing stops this train. And as long as that train is chugging along on the tracks, Bitcoin and gold, for that matter, will continue to rise.
Yes. What happened with Milei, I was reading today Saving, that, by the way, is a person who I admire and respect. And he wrote one of the biggest books, not about Bitcoin, about the economy of all history. It's going to be, the Bitcoin Standard for me is the best economy book I ever read, and probably the best economy book of history. And I read a lot of economic books, and old ones, new ones, whatever. But he said that Milei is running a Ponzi scheme.
Wow.
He doesn't understand how Argentinian politics work and why Milei is doing what he's doing. He came with the chainsaw, and he did a lot with the chainsaw, going against the old politicians, the caste, as he say, that they control Argentina. They are like a disease that is spread around Argentina. And they control, he arrived voted by the people, and they control everything. And everything that he wants to do, the Congress went down. The Congress is giving the opposition that they didn't do to any other president in history. So Milei is forced to do a lot of things that to keep the inflation going down, to keep the US dollar, to not destroy the people in the middle. So, but these things need a proof of work. Putting the macro in order needs a proof of work. And that's why he lost the elections. But there were not the big elections. There were local elections, but in the biggest province of Argentina, that is Buenos Aires, that has been controlled by the left forever. And I come from this province. And I usually talk with the people from Africa, that they talk about all the problems that Africa has, and they don't have light, they don't have anything. And I'm lucky because I was born in a part of this province where I had everything. But if I travel 20 minutes, half an hour from the house of my mom now, it's like we're being in Africa. So these people win the election by giving to the poor like a bag of food before the election, and they leave. And that's why the powers that Milei is confronting, and that's why he's doing what he's doing. Probably Saifdin is watching the economical side, that I understand him, but he's not inside the political side of Argentina. He does not understand how Argentina and the political world of Argentina works. So that's why you mentioned Milei, but at the end of the day, Milei was the first guy who spoke out about we need to cut expenses, we need to do fiscal surplus. He spoke against all the woke virus that is destroying the world and all the problems that the left is causing to the world. So that's my point.
Well, I mention Milei very, very, very often. I listened to Milei's speech at the World Economic Forum in December of 2023, and anyone who I hear talking about Bitcoin or, what's happening in the world or politics or how society is changing, I tell them to watch Milei's speech, because that speech for me was one of the greatest speeches of the past 20 years. I think he called it absolutely correctly.
Because we suffer in Argentina. For example, previous today, we have a weekly show with a local Hong Kong girl that she talk about Bitcoin, crypto, and mostly she understands a lot about macro and all these things. And she was asking me if I think that Biden administration manipulated the statistics. And I say, for sure they did. Because in Argentina, when the Kirchners were in office, they manipulated everything. And the Kirchners are the same as the Bidens, and are the same left that is now in Europe and is destroying the world. So Milei come to Davos or to the World Economic Forum to say, guys, I'm coming from the future. All that you are doing, we already suffer in Argentina and put us in a disaster. That's the point. I don't want to talk about politics because this is not a show about politics. And I always say that you can vote. You don't have to wait every 2 years to go and vote. You can vote every day, 24/7, and you can vote to Bitcoin. How? This is something that I learned from an amazing Bitcoiner that is Brian the Mint, that he wrote a book, and he said in his book, a chapter say, every day is election day. Every day is an election day. If you are a Bitcoiner, every time you purchase sats, you are fighting against this corrupt system, the Fiat system that is destroying the world. Probably Milei end up, because there are now some corruption cases in Argentina, probably Milei is eaten by the system. But what you need to understand is the ideas, the libertarian ideas, and you can vote every day to Bitcoin. You can vote against this corrupt system by buying Bitcoin and having in self-custody. So that's why. sorry, because I diverted. But you mentioned Milei, and I think with his errors, with his mistakes, I think that is the best thing that happened to Argentina in many years. And he put this Herman in the world by talking about, guys, we are going in the totally wrong direction, because we have an amazing country, we have a very rich country, and with all this socialist idea, we destroy that. And let's finish talking about politics, because again, and to be honest, on Saturday, I hosted in my Argentina, because I host the podcast in English and in Spanish, one very, very famous analyst from Argentina that he hates Milei. So and, anyway, but the thing is, I don't care about politics. I always I have my vision, my ideas, my belief, but I always said, also it's not financial advice, vote every day for Bitcoin against the corrupt system. So I stop about talking about the politics, and I want to ask you, what do you think about the Bitcoin treasury companies now that we are talking about all the things and the power between Bitcoin and all the things?
What do I think about Bitcoin? What? Sorry, I didn't catch the word.
Bitcoin treasury companies.
Ah,
That is the new thing that everyone is talking about.
wow. We'd probably create less controversy by talking about politics. Bitcoin treasury, very, very divisive at the minute, I think. So just to tell you my story, I told you earlier that I'm a maxi. I'm not strictly speaking a maxi. I would say I'm 90% in Bitcoin. I'm 8% in a Bitcoin treasury company. And then I reserve the right, because of my background, I keep a little bit of money that I play around with emerging tech. And it's more, I do that more. I always think you learn more about a subject when you have some skin in the game, when your head's on the block. So I buy stocks from time to time of emerging AI or so I bought some Bitcoin treasury company stock back in the spring. I bought a little bit of Metaplanet and I bought a little bit of MicroStrategy. I actually, for a short time, held a little bit of Semler. And I very quickly sold the Metaplanet, sold the Semler, and put all of my treasury company money into strategy. There was a little bit of FOMO going on, which made me do that. Subsequently, even before the price dipped, I regretted my decision. Now, this is in a retirement account, so the daily price or the weekly price or the monthly price doesn't really matter. You know, I should just switch off access to the account and forget about it for, I'm 52, so I'm not going to be allowed to touch that account for 7.5 years. But it's not nice when I do log on to that account and I see red every day for strategy. And of course, if you go on Bitcoin or X Spaces, it's a difficult one to talk about because some people. So I just told you that I'm 90% Bitcoin, 8% Bitcoin treasury company. Some people are on Bitcoin Spaces talking about Bitcoin treasury companies and they don't have any Bitcoin. They only own strategy, or they only own one of these instruments that strategy has created. So they're obviously very vocal in their criticism of what's going on right now. Whereas I think the more Bitcoin you have, it should calm your mind as to what's going on. Now, if we're going to talk, we're talking about Bitcoin treasury companies, but I think we're really talking about strategy, right? Because now, who am I? I'm nobody, but you ask me the question, so I'll answer. If I had a piece of advice for Michael Saylor, I would say you're one of the phenomenal minds of our time. What you're doing is absolutely, like, I think Michael Saylor is going to go down in history as being one of the most forward-thinking, shrewdest financial guys in modern history. But he makes mistakes. There was a little bit of a PR problem around at the earnings call. He said he was going to do certain things and not do other things, and then a month later he did them. So my advice to Michael Saylor would be, go on to Madison Avenue, New York, and find yourself the best PR consultant that money can buy, and sit down for an hour every week with that PR consultant, and make sure it's a Bitcoiner, and take guidance from a PR consultant. And I would also tell him, no more conferences. No more conferences. Step away from the conferences, because you can't be the guy that's closing conferences and talking about the underlying asset, and then also being the voice of the company who's engineering the new financial products that are built on that underlying asset. You're trying to play both sides of the game. You're pissing off Bitcoiners because when you go to a conference and you mention strategy, and a certain amount of Bitcoiners will sell some Bitcoin to buy, the maxis will, because they don't have any other money, right? So they'll sell some of their Bitcoin to buy strategy stock, and then the strategy stock is performing not on track with Bitcoin, and they're pissed. So if you're Michael Saylor, why do you want to make people pissed? Step away from the Bitcoin. You've done your part. You've given 5 years of exceptional service, free service. Michael Saylor was our voluntary director of marketing and director of sales and director of communications. He's done that for 5 years. I would suggest that it's time for him to step back a little bit from the conferences and from being the voice of Bitcoin, and to focus more on being the head of strategy. I think that's creating a conflict for him. So that's not answering your question. What do I think? I recently was asked on a space. Now, this is about 6 weeks ago when the price of strategy dropped enormously within a few days. And I was pissed. At that time, I was pissed. It was a knee-jerk reaction. No one likes seeing red, and they don't like seeing red every day for 2 weeks. So I was pissed. I was on a space, and there was a space again the following day, and I had calmed down the following day, and someone said, well, what do you think about strategy? And I said, the analogy that I said about strategy was as follows. I'm a laborer, okay? And I'm in Europe, and it's the 1400s or 1500s or whatever, and there's a bunch of ships leaving to cross the ocean, and there's a guy, a visionary, and he's saying, there's a new world out there. We're going to know riches beyond our wildest dreams. And I sign up to that guy's vision, and I step on board that ship, and for the first couple of days or a week, we're sailing. There's sunshine. We have all our fresh fruit. It's still fresh. Everything's great. No one's tired. Everyone's getting along well. And then we hit a storm, and I'm over the edge. I'm seasick, and I'm saying, this damn captain, he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know where he's going. I start to doubt the dream. The captain then says, this storm means we're off course and we have to cut back on our food. So we'll start rationing the food and water, and I'm getting sick, and there's rats on board, and people are threatening mutiny. But the overall picture is we're still sailing for the promised land, and the navigator and the captain knows what he's doing. You can't make that type of revolutionary change without going through change, and there's going to be bumps along the way. So do I regret that I put, and I'll just come out and say this, I could have bought one more Bitcoin with what I put into MicroStrategy back in the spring, and I'm pissed about that. But it is what it is. Am I any less bullish in the long term about strategy? No. In fact, I would even say as time goes by, I'm probably more bullish, because something else that I said recently that pissed off a lot of people, I said, Saylor doesn't care what the shareholders think right now. He's meant to care. That's like, he's under the terms of his position at strategy. He's meant to care for his shareholders. Saylor doesn't care if they're pissed for a few months. He's got this vision. He's like the captain of that ship. And I said he would sell his left nut to buy more Bitcoin. And if that means hitting the ATM, if it means going on television and lying, if it means he is determined to buy, and can you fault him for that? So I think his target is 1 million Bitcoin. And I think at 1 million Bitcoin, he's going to stop, and he's going to sit down with his board, and he's going to say, okay, we've reached this target of 1 million Bitcoin. Now what's the strategy? Now we can pay attention to the shareholders, and we can pay attention to giving them return on their investment. But I don't think he's going to stop until he gets to 1 million Bitcoin. And I think a lot of people are going to be pissed the closer we get to that target, because he's going to keep hitting the ATM.
Of course, yes, it is. That's the thing. But the thing is that you need to understand the game. And I love the analogy that you did with the captain of the ship. Saylor, what I think from, I'm a Bitcoiner, I'm a super maxi, And there is this dichotomy. Many of the OGs or some of the OGs think that the treasury companies are the shit coins of this cycle. Others say that for me, is either they are Trojan horse for sure. Either Trojan horse for the financial system or Trojan horse from the financial system to Bitcoin. I believe that they are Trojan horse for the financial system. Said that, there is going to be a lot of hype, and there are going to be a lot of companies that will say, we are a Bitcoin treasury company. They just buy the couple of Bitcoin, pump their stock, and they rug pull the people. So you need to do the math. But talking about Saylor, on the other side, I don't like all the status that most of the people put Saylor as a rock star. I don't like the cult behind around Saylor. I admire him again. It's like I have a lot of respect, and I've been orange pilled by him, by the way. But I don't like this cult that people doing the cult of Saylor, buying the merch of strategy, and all these things as if it was your favorite football team, because your football team is something irrational, and this needs to be something rational. I believe in Saylor. I believe what he's doing. I do agree with you. He's gonna go no matter what, and I support, and I have shares in MicroStrategy as well. Go a full speed to get this 1 million Bitcoin, but I don't like all this rock status, and I agree with you. For example, talking about if he has to speak or not, I met at the conference to Simon Gerlovich, the CEO of MetaPlanet, and I wanted to ask him a couple of questions. Not about Bitcoin. I was around with my camera asking stupid questions like, explain Bitcoin to your grandma or whatever. And he said, I cannot speak because my lawyer said I'm not gonna, I don't have to speak. And he was supposed to be with Trump in the closing, and he didn't talk. So yeah, probably Saylor needs to find a good PR, a Bitcoiner PR. But I think that what he's doing is great. And I think that on the other side, what the treasury companies that are well run, another example is, MetaPlanet, of course, the Smarter Web company from the UK. I had the pleasure to spend the whole day with the CEO here in Hong Kong, that he reports every Saturday a long Twitter to all the community. All these companies, what they're doing is putting Bitcoin mainstream. At the end of the day, that's the goal. They are putting Bitcoin mainstream. So if you do your job and you do your own research, you can go and buy these companies shares, or you can go and buy Bitcoin. And this is an amazing way to orange pill people, to put Bitcoin messy, because you said we need more podcasts, but probably to me, I have 10 people listening to me. But if Saylor talk about Bitcoin, that is a guy who is billionaire, who has a company listed on the stocks, they're going to listen to him more. And most of them, they're going to say, no, I don't want to buy the stock, but I will buy Bitcoin. And that's the magic also of the Bitcoin treasury companies.
So a couple of more things I would say to elaborate on my answer is the captain of that ship, I signed up for that ship, for that voyage into the unknown with that captain when I left Europe in the 1400s. The captain of that ship didn't know where the new land was. He wasn't able to scientifically tell people we're going to sail 3,000 miles due west and we're going to hit land. It was built. He had the vision. He knew that there was a probability. Well, back in those days, he knew that if he didn't hit land, that he would eventually come back to Europe on the other side of the world, because most of the world thought the earth was flat at that stage, that he would sail off the edge. He knew that wasn't true. But beyond that, he didn't have satellite images. He didn't have, so I'm making the comparison that while Saylor has the vision and has the brains to do this, he doesn't know what the landscape's going to be in 5 years, 10 years. There's a certain amount of making this up as they go along, because we are making it up as we go along. This is new. This has never been done before. And the other thing I would say, I hear people criticizing Bitcoin treasury companies, and in the same breath, they're cool with stablecoins. Now, I don't hear this half enough, and I would be far more concerned if I had some of my money tied up in stablecoins. I would be much, much more. What is a stablecoin? What is a stablecoin? A stablecoin is a digital currency that's benched to a fiat currency. It's 100% aligned with a fiat currency. So,
and worse, this fiat currency has a company behind, not even a government. That is even worse.
And this extends into another area where I'm kind of controversial.
Sorry. Except one that is dollar on chain. That is a Bitcoin-backed digital stable coin that is run by a friend of mine. It's not financial advice, and it's not, but it's real. It's a stable coin that is decentralized, and it's not that the CEO of the company can ban you for using. So, but anyways, I wanted to comment this.
So the concept of stable coins, like I've never owned a stable coin. I don't think I ever will own a stable coin. And I believe that's because I entered the Bitcoin space in 2023, right? I think if you're an OG if I had bought Bitcoin in 2013 at $200, I would be talking about stable coins. Why? Because I would be the type of person that has I'm sitting on huge profits and I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to spend some of my Bitcoin in a tax effective way. I'm sitting with this huge tax problem. So I'm trying to convince people that Bitcoin isn't just a store of value, it's a medium of exchange. And it would be easy for me if I was sitting on $15 million and I'm telling people, oh yeah, you should spend your Bitcoin. You should buy coffee with your Bitcoin. You should buy your airline ticket. You should buy your hotel ticket when you go to a conference. Hey, I don't think that's a good idea, because you can't, on the one hand, talk about Bitcoin being a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you can't, on the same hand, tell people you have to get as many Satoshis together and guard them with your life, and then on the other hand say, yeah, go out and give some of those hard-earned Satoshis away for a cup of coffee. It's not a medium of exchange as yet. It's not something that we can use. Whether we planned it this way or not, or whether this was our strategy or not, we're sitting on a store of value. And until such time as the world changes, and I talked about that change starting to happen, it's only then that we can think about how to use this new wealth. Like, I don't see Bitcoin as being liquid right now. I don't see Bitcoin as being something. I'm not going to go out and buy a new car. My lease on my current car is up next January. I'm going to let that lease go, and I'm not going to sign another lease. I'm going to buy a junker, because I don't want to give away some of my Bitcoin in a car. Are you kidding me? And I'm not going to give it away for cups of coffee, and I'm not going to give it away for the medium of exchange idea. There are no vendors out there who don't understand Bitcoin who are accepting Bitcoin as payment. What is the medium of exchange? The medium of exchange is other Bitcoiners who want your Bitcoin. And they're coming up with services or pieces of whatever. Oh, it's cool. And everybody says, oh, yeah, that's cool. You can pay in Bitcoin. I don't think that's cool, because I think you're giving away something that's precious to you, that's going to grow exponentially in the years to come. And you're giving it away to another Bitcoin for what? For a book? For a book? Like, it goes against all the principles of storing your time and energy. That book is not going to increase in value at the same rate as the Bitcoin over time. So I'm very definitely a store of value guy, and I look at stable coins the same way. Why do people want to push stable coins? It's a play on, it's a tax play. It's OGs who are in Bitcoin a long time. They're in a different place in time than I am. I've just bought my Bitcoin 2 years ago. I'm not in that place yet. I haven't realized enough unrealized gains yet to start thinking about how am I going to spend it, or how am I going to convert it in a non-taxable event. So I would caution people about the concept of stablecoins, what they are. How could a stable value change overnight? And it will, because it's linked to a fiat currency. And I would also caution people about, hey, if you want to spend your Bitcoin, that's fine. I'm nobody to tell you what to do with your Bitcoin. But I just think there aren't enough voices that are saying to people, hey, remember how you felt when you bought this Bitcoin? And then out of every paycheck, you were putting your hard-earned money, you were trying to get every Satoshi together that you could, and now you're giving it away for, I don't know, a cartoon that another Bitcoin created, and they wanted, that's a whole other conversation. Sometimes I ruffle people's feathers because when I go on spaces, I'm on spaces with people who have tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, and they've had it. They bought their Bitcoin at $100, $200, $500, and now it's worth $113,000, and they're sitting on all this profit, and they can't figure out a way to spend it, and maybe they're 68, 69 years of age and they don't have forever. That's a very different situation than a Gen Z who's listening to that conversation, who had to work very, very, very hard to put half a Bitcoin together and take it into self-custody. And he's going to have to hold that. For that to be life-changing, the Gen Z guy is going to have to hold that through some very tough economic times. So that's a voice that I don't hear enough in the Bitcoin space, the pushback against Bitcoin being a medium of exchange. I would tell people to be cautious when they're hearing OGs and very wealthy people talking about a medium of exchange. It depends who you are, what your investment is, what your unrealized gain is, what age you are, what jurisdiction you're living in. So I would caution people to proceed in their own best interests, not on the advice of some 68-year-old guy who got into Bitcoin in 2012.
Yes, I do this. I agree. Even though a couple of weeks ago I bought coffee with Bitcoin, but sometimes when I like doing this with the Lightning, it's not with the Bitcoin. It's because I have Noster and I get SAP. When I get SAP, I collect this in the Lightning, and I usually like to buy some stuff when I see I accept Bitcoin, something like that. But yeah, I'm also a store of value guy. I think that how come are you gonna sell or the most precious asset ever existed and ever will exist for a car, for a mansion? I don't give a crap about that. So that's the point.
Now, just to clarify, I'm talking at this moment in time. So if someone's watching this on YouTube in 5 years' time and they say that guy's a nutcase, I'm talking about the climate that we're currently in and the price that Bitcoin's at the current time and the tax situations as they are right now and the accountancy situation. At this moment in time, that's my opinion. Now, do I think Bitcoin's going to be a medium of exchange in the future? Absolutely. Absolutely. But not right now.
Not right now. Yeah. Not right now. I think that in the future, but we need to reach the hyper-Bitcoinization. Fiat is going to be destroyed. We need to go through this phase of fiat destruction. It's going to take time because I think you mentioned that the battle of fiat is going to die, but it's giving a hard battle. Let's see.
There's a tendency within the Bitcoin community as well to think that we're the only ones who see this, right? But if you're Jerome Powell and if you're Jamie Dimon and you don't own Bitcoin and you're publicly against Bitcoin, I mean, you're not stupid either, right? Fiat isn't going.
The point is that
they're not going down without a fight, and these are very powerful, resourceful, intelligent people. So that's another thing where people push back against my opinion. I don't think Fiat's collapsing anytime soon because I think history shows us the amounts of things that they're able to do to keep this machine going. And I'm talking specifically as someone who lives in the US. like there's a never-ending list of financial engineering and moving the goalposts and things that they can do. So yeah, I think Fiat has
the problem. The problem with Fiat is the same problem that we had with Fiat will end when we decide that will end. As I said, and again, I will quote Brian DeMint because the idea is from him. Every day is a voting day. Every day is voting day. No matter which candidate, you can vote. When you vote, when you put your money, your energy into Bitcoin, and doesn't have to be one Bitcoin, can be 1,000 sats, 100 sats, whatever amount that you put, you are voting against them. And with most votes that we collect, we are gonna win. Again, they are not gonna. They are not gonna. They're gonna give a huge battle. I think that they are stupids because they think that. You told me before that I'm an economist, so I can understand easier. No way. An economist understands certain aspects of the economy, but to understand Bitcoin, you need to de-learn. You need to reset your brain and learn. It's like if you drive a car and then you need to drive a plane. Are two different things. You need to learn one thing and then you need to learn the other thing. And you can know to drive a plane. You can know to fly a plane. You can fly a plane and you cannot drive. Or most of the people can drive a car but cannot fly a plane. So I think that this is the thing. And most of the people, they still don't understand, especially these people that are close to the printing machine and they have all the money that they won by by pressing a button. So that's the thing. People who needs Bitcoin understand better. And again, we can vote every day. Every day is election day, and we can vote to Bitcoin, not any politicians. So again, same thing. If you listen to this, don't be offended at me. I support you. I respect you, but you saw only one side of Milei. But anyways, so again, we can vote to Bitcoin. And let's move to the last part of the conversation and coming back to what we were speaking at the beginning, the family side of Bitcoin, and how do you see that Bitcoin fitting into family legacies? Like ensure the kids to learn, to save, and to keep this family legacy that is going to be passed generation through generation.
Let me start by asking you: Are you a fan of television series? Have you watched one called Yellowstone?
No, I'm not a fan of television at all. I only have my TV to watch UFC, and the only series I watch is Breaking Bad.
Very good.
And yeah, this is the only series I watch it.
That's where Nothing Stops This Train comes from. The reason I ask you about Yellowstone is so the story, and we're not here to talk about TV, but the story in a nutshell is immigrants to the United States went through all kinds of very serious wars and conflicts and battles to preserve their piece of land in, I'm not sure if it was the western side of Wyoming or the eastern side of, in the Montana or Wyoming region where there's very large ranches. And so over the course of generations, they had to do unspeakable things, and they faced all kinds of attacks from banks and natives and all kinds of things, diseases on their cattle and all kinds of things. And eventually, despite doing all of these unspeakable things and this tremendous drive that they had and pride in this ranch, they lost it, right? And I think Saylor spoke about that in Nashville last year. I think Nashville was one of his most interesting speeches. You might remember that he showed examples of how empires and wealthy families declined in the fiat system. He talked about if you held your money in the peso, how long it takes for your wealth to disappear. If you held it in real estate, how long it takes your wealth to disappear. So you're talking about legacy. And Saylor mentioned, I think the name of the ranch was the King Ranch in Texas. And they were the longest store of value through generations in the United States. I could be wrong about this, but from memory of Saylor's speech. But ultimately, and he mentioned the royal family in Britain. But he then went a bit further and he said, but they passed from this family to that family to this family to that family. So the message I'm trying to deliver is legacy through it's very, very, very difficult to preserve. Like, that's why it's so unusual when you see that a business has been in the same ownership for 3 generations. It's a very, very, very hard thing to do. Preserving wealth. We're looking at a man on the wall there who, in his time, he was a very, very wealthy man, my grandfather. But he died early in a car crash in 1944. My father was 11 years of age. He owned 2 farms. He owned 2 or 3 businesses. He was a contractor. After the time he died, my grandmother took a court case against his death for compensation. She lost the case. And one of the farms had to be sold. All the businesses had to be sold. The only farm that remained was the farm I was raised on. So his wealth disappeared in the blink of an eye. A car accident. Legacy, really, really, really difficult thing for a man to try and set up and to ensure that it passes on until 2009, right? Until 2000. That's one of the beauties of this thing. I go to bed at night and I sleep sounder now than I have ever slept before in my life, and I have a toddler. And I still sleep sound, because when I put my head down on that pillow, the only thing that's annoying me, sometimes I think about politics, sometimes I think about my football team, sometimes I think about, I might think about tires that need to be replaced in my car, but they're minor things. But the major thing, Sam is going to be 2 years old in October. I sleep peacefully at night because I know Sam is going to be fine. And if Sam's halfway smart and organized, and I am going to hopefully teach him in the right way, his kids are also going to be. And I don't have a lot of Bitcoin. I'm not one of these guys that has a lot of Bitcoin, but I already know that he's going to be fine. And that's why I'm so vocal about the medium of exchange right now, because every sat that you part with today, through time, if you push the time far enough out, that's going to be a pizza day, right? People are going to say, oh my God, that guy spent 0.005 Bitcoin on a car, and now 0.005 Bitcoin would buy a car plant. So hang the hell onto it. Like, oh my God, I get so passionate about this, especially for people that entered late and you don't have a lot of Bitcoin. Hang on to it, because it is going to be life-changing. Maybe not for me. I think I'm going to live, and I'm pretty easy to say. I don't want a Lamborghini. You can keep your Lamborghini. I don't want it. It's more trouble than it's worth. I have a sore back. I don't think I could get into a Lamborghini. I don't want to live in a mansion. I don't want to have to worry about all the maintenance of a mansion. I have easy. I'm easy to keep. I don't spend much. So this is really about Sam. And to answer your question, I sleep easy at night because I know that Sam, even as an only kid with older parents, the laws of nature dictate that Sam is going to be 30, 35 years old, and he's going to be on his own. He's going to have no one to call and say, hey, I ran up my credit card. Can you get me through this month? And that was a worry for me, and that's why I found Bitcoin. But I now know that he's going to be fine, if he's smart about it. But the opportunity is there for him to be fine, and only Bitcoin can do that.
Yes, totally agree on that, and it's an amazing way, because my last question, I have 2 last questions. One is the future of Bitcoin. I think that you already answered. It's a great way to close this conversation, because I think that the legacy, your kids, and that's all the thing that Bitcoin gives you all these values. Like it makes you value other things that are not material. And that's the magic of Bitcoin. As you said, for me, I live in a small apartment that I rent in Hong Kong. I love having all my comfort. Like I love being in comfort. I don't live in a shit place. I like to be but I would stay here all my life and I would be happy. Even if Bitcoin, and I also don't have many Bitcoins. So even if Bitcoin goes to 500 million, I don't care. I enjoy other things of the life, and I want to give this legacy, and I hope in the future have my own, not Sam, my Fernando Jr. and teach. I always said that the day I have my kid, there are gonna be three things that are not gonna be negotiable with their mother, with his mother. One is gonna be he's gonna speak Spanish, he's gonna learn Spanish, but the Argentinian Spanish, not any Spanish. The second thing is he's gonna train, he or she, whatever, I don't care. He's gonna learn martial arts since kid, because I love martial arts and are a way to build a character and the discipline that you need to understand the third thing that he or she's gonna learn, that is Bitcoin. So these are the three things that are not going to be negotiable. Then the mother can take him or her play piano, can make him or be vegan, whatever they want. But these three things are unnegotiable, because I think that are the things, besides the Spanish, right, are the things that build your character and makes you aware of the world that you live.
So the only thing I would add to that, I love that. And the only thing that I would add to that, but it's because I live in the US, Sam's going to know how to use a weapon. He's going to know how to use, and as someone, you didn't want to talk about politics, but I would consider myself with a lot in common with libertarian thought. The concept of property rights and self-sovereignty. So if the law provides for it in whatever state I live in the States, yeah, Sam is going to know and understand both the danger and the safety of being able to operate a weapon and know when to use it.
Oh, this is a good point. This is a good point. The thing is that's because you are. I think that you are from the UK or Irish, but you live in the United States.
Come on.
Where are you from?
I'm not from. Oh man, you said the wrong thing to an Irishman.
Sorry.
Do you know what that would be like? That would be like me going to South America and saying to people, you're Spanish, you're part of Spain.
No way.
Yeah.
No, but
I'm from the north. I'm from the northwest of Ireland. I'm very close to the border with Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom, but I'm from the Republic of Ireland. We're very proud people that we're sovereign. We won our independence. We're very proud of that. That's another thing that this guy has a medal for. Yeah, I'm Irish, but I live in the United States.
You know, I thought that you were from Northern Ireland because you said at the beginning, and that drives me to my dad, because my dad taught me a lot about George Best. I grew and I think that George Best died with a few months of difference of my dad.
I have to show you something now that you mentioned football. I have to show you something. So you see this?
Yeah. The ball.
So my grandfather started a football club in 1925, 5 years before the first World Cup. And that football club is still in existence, and they're still it's a local football club, and they're still playing in the same pitch continuously. So we had our 100-year anniversary celebrations on Saturday, and I was the MC, but I also told the history of the team. And so this cup, I had this cup with me. It's been in our family. That cup, the football team won that cup in 1930, 1931, and 1932, so they got to keep the cup. My grandfather was both the owner of the club and the manager, so it ended up in our family. So Yeah, you're talking about legacy. I'm very well tuned with legacy, but also on the football side, another story that I told when I was relaying the history of that cup. This local football team, my father, who's since passed away, in I believe it was 1959, in a competition which is called a summer cup. So a summer cup is like an informal, every town or village will have a summer cup, and you bring teams. So my father was the manager of the team at that stage, and there's a lot of immigration between Ireland and Scotland. So a man called Paddy Crerand, who played for Manchester United, his parents were from the north of Ireland. So when he was a child, he holidayed in our county. And so my father and two of his friends went to him and made a proposition. They paid him to come and play for them in their team. So yeah, for a very small team here, 9 years later, he lifted the European Cup with Best and Bobby Charlton. So yeah, there's a little bit of football. I'm also very passionate about football.
Well, you can see that I have the World Cup here. So football is one of my religions. What is the name of the team, by the way? I will search it.
Well, the name of the team is Dromahal FC. Very small team. I'll spell it DRUM, like a drum.
Mm-hmm.
OG, like original gangster.
Mm-hmm.
HILL, Dromahal.
I will search it. In which division? In which division play?
They currently play in the bottom division. They're developing their facilities at the minute. The attention is on they're actually developing schoolboys, youths football again, and their facilities. So the emphasis is not on the first team. So they're in the bottom division, Division 2 of the Donegal League.
Nice. I'm a big fan of football. Like when I was in Argentina, I used to be a football as a hobby, of course, a football commentator for the team of my city and the team that I support. So that's football for us. Since I moved to Asia, I lost a little bit the contact with the football. But well, last time I've been in Argentina in 2022 during the World Cup, for me was magic because I lived. I remember when we won the World Cup in 1986, I was 5 years old, and I lived through all the things that my dad used to tell me about the World Cup. So it's amazing. So yes.
So I have to tell you very quickly one more story. So when I was a kid, I'm 9 years older than you. So my first recollection of watching a live football game was through the ticker tape, 1978. Buenos Aires. Man, I was amazed. It was the first time I'd seen football outside of Ireland or the UK. And so I watched that World Cup final. Now, I was very, very, very young. I was 5 or 6 years old. In the months following the World Cup final, a team in England signed two of the best players from that team, Ozzy Ardila and Ricardo Villa. They were the first South American players to come and play in Europe or come and play in England. So the team that signed them, I started supporting that team, Tottenham, and I'm still passionate about Tottenham. And the best manager that Tottenham had in the modern times was Mauricio Pochettino.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So yeah, I love Italian, or I love Italian and Argentinian football. I'm not so much a fan of tiki-taka and this style of football. I like aggression in football. I like you can have aggression and skill in the same team, so that's why I admire Argentinian football.
I hope like now is coming the World Cup next year. I hope that Messi can retire by winning his second World Cup. But sorry to all of our listeners who are from United States that they don't like football. But again, they put me football, and it's something that I love. So Sam, the last question that I have for you before I go to sleep is, if you had the chance to sit down with Satoshi Nakamoto, what would you ask or say to him, her, or them?
Oh, just one question?
Any
or one
question?
comment?
Whatever you want.
I don't think I could contain it to one. Like most people say, they wouldn't ask him anything. They would say thank you. I would ask him lots of things, lots and lots of things. I would ask him about his background. I would ask him about his innermost thoughts. I would ask him about, was he rebellious? Like, where did you have to be rebellious against the system to create something that's going to destroy the world monetary system. Where did that rebelliousness come from? Was it just financial rebelliousness? Who was he as a person? Like, did he believe in the small guy over the power of the state? Were there other examples of that earlier in his life? I would ask him about football. Did he support the small team instead of supporting the champions? You know, did he favor the underdog? I would like to get inside the guy's mind and ask him about not just about Bitcoin, but I would like to understand the man. And I mightn't even mention Bitcoin at all. I would just like to understand the man and where his motivations came from.
You know, this is one of the best answers, the best question to Satoshi, together with a girl from Colombia. She would ask him or her or whatever, what is the morning and the night routine? That's the only, because she says that the morning routine and the night routine talks a lot about the question. And by the way, I support a small team from Argentina, from my city, that is in second division. Now we are close to probably play the final to be promoted to first division after more than 50 years. So
what's the name? What's the name?
The name is so funny because my city is, the pronunciation is Moron, but it writes Moron, like moron. That's the city I come from. So
okay,
that's the team that I support. This Moron is a small team from Buenos Aires that we are in second division, and we play only 1 year in the first division, 1969. I was a kid, and that's one of the other things that I had the connection with my dad, because he used to tell me he went to celebration when my team went to first division. So enough football. Sam, anything else you want to add, and how people can contact you?
Yeah, I'm mostly on X at the Sam's Podcast. I'm on YouTube at the Sam's Podcast. On a bit of a sabbatical at the minute. I'm at home visiting my family in Ireland. I haven't uploaded any new episodes in the past 10 days, but I'm there and I'm coming back, and I've actually got some great interviews that I have to edit. I'll probably put 2 or 3 out very quickly now in the next couple of days. So YouTube and X is mostly where I can be found. And the only other thing that I would add is, you know, to anyone who's entering the space or thinking about entering the space now, you're not too late. No, you're not too late. It's like, I could have allowed myself to believe in 2023 that I was too late. Would you believe that from when I entered in 2023, within a period of just about a year, I doubled my investment. So, you know, within 12 months. So I'm not saying everybody's going to double their investment within 12 months, but the point I'm making is you're not too late. Don't worry if you can't get to 1 Bitcoin. Whatever your stack is, just make sure you've tried your hardest to get as many Bitcoin as you can. Take it into self-custody and guard that stuff with your life. There's nothing more important other than family, football, and God, if you believe in God. There's nothing more important than Bitcoin. So hang on to it with your life. Don't buy freaking coffee, was it? Hang on to that Bitcoin. That's my message.
Excellent. Sam, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to talk with you today. A pity that we didn't have the other Sam, but I want to go to your show and be with Sam, with the other Sam as well, live.
We're going to make that happen. I was actually thinking that earlier on. So yeah, you'd be more than welcome on our podcast, and you'll meet Sam.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day. And again, an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much.
And thank you very much to everyone who is on the other side. If you like the episode, please give us a like, subscribe to our channel, to follow in our social media, and help us to reach 8 billion people and orange pill the whole world. Share this episode with the people you love. Share this episode with the people you hate, because as I said, we must reach 8 billion people and bring them into Bitcoin. See you in the next episode of our podcast. Stay humble, stack sats, and remember, we are all Satoshi.